corner. But it's Leave, the first to fall. Who would have thought? Cords now has to go to the left-hand side. There's still 2 healers up for China, but Gucci! He feeds himself to the beast! And now Saudi Arabia can bask under the immortality field and bask in the realization that they have gone every step of the way to become your World Cup champions!
Hello everyone, it's been a hot second since I released some analysis content for Overwatch, so I thought what better way to kick it off than look at the World Cup Grand Finals where China were reverse swept by Saudi Arabia. China were on dive, some version of this, pretty much the entire series. Saudi Arabia did Sigma with either the double flex or the Lucio. So we're going to look at why it didn't work on maps 1 and 2 for Saudi Arabia, what they changed on maps 3 and 4 to turn it back in their favour, and then we'll take a bit of a closer look at Route 66, which kind of doesn't sit in either category quite cleanly. We'll skip over Samoa Beach because Saudi Arabia played Junker Queen and it just didn't really work. They weren't able to find many aggressive timings and it just fell apart and then they never tried it again. So we'll start on Downtown instead, where we get a more familiar matchup because this is the Lucio comp that Saudi Arabia will eventually have quite a lot of success with into this comp from China, but they don't have success here and they will go on to lose this map. So let's look at one of the key reasons they were struggling in this early map. What we're going to see is the fight's going to start with Saudi Arabia in control. China going to start the retake with their rally in a second. You're going to see Saudi Arabia going to kite back, drop the wall. The blade's going to come in and they're going to beat. And this is a pretty common pattern when you're playing some kind of ground tank comp versus a dive comp, is the dive team is going to attempt to dive with some kind of aggressive ult. You're going to try and take a step back, use your defensive ults, like these two right here, and then a pushback timing. And this pushback timing is the key. This is where you find your value and you find your kills and you find a way to win the fight. So far, pretty happy with this situation if you're Saudi Arabia. You've matched the ults, you've kept control of point. No one's really broken formation, everyone's still pretty tight. Now we're going to try and go with Flux. They do get the stun between the bash and the punch, and this is obviously a good outplay by China, but still not too bad for Saudi Arabia. They're still relatively tightly grouped, and they have a big pushback opportunity. If we watch the pushback here, what we're going to see is a few split ideas. We're going to see Quartz swing out wide one way, and then Yubi's going to go for a TP play on the other. And if I pause it right now, you see Haku and Yubi are looking for this TP play onto Shy. Not unreasonable since he's going to use Overclock, but Quartz has swung out this way on his own, and what Quartz has done here, he's just isolated himself. And this makes a really nice kill for Gucci and Leave, and they're just able to pull them apart. They pull them apart one way. Yubi and Haku aren't able to catch Shy. Now all of a sudden they're getting flanked and encircled from all angles, and it just falls apart. It's important on the pushback timings that we're not just in sync in terms of we're not splitting off in different directions, but it's also important we're in sync in terms of how aggressive we are and we're as ruthless as possible. If you can ever get the dive team on the back foot, where the Winston, the Doom, the Genji don't have time to reset, you want to keep them on the back foot, keep applying that pressure, never allow them to set up another cycle. In this clip, we'll see Saudi Arabia start the fight with a pretty nice outplay. China going to start with an aggressive nano. We're going to get a nice TP, and they flip from this area to this area, which is a really nice bunker area, a good place to peel any further aggression. KSA is going to keep anchoring the point. Quartz is able to regroup with the team. Everything looks perfect for Saudi Arabia here. Now, they're even going to get a pick and drop the wall. So again, seems really good for Saudi Arabia. They can stay in their bunker position. They can keep KSA pocketed on point. They can just push back eventually when this rally fades. China going to double down. Going to keep going with the blade in a second here when they get it. But Haku does have the beat. Haku's going to hold on to that beat here. He's going to drop the beat, and they deal with the blade. And now if I look at this from the overhead, there should be no way this can really go wrong for Saudi Arabia. But if I look at the pressure Leave gets put under, it's not enough. In this situation, Leave has to die. It should be impossible that he lives in this situation. But if we look at it from Leave's point of view, he's going to manage to go top. Magic's going to chase him. But no one else is chasing him. If I pause it now, where's the rest of Saudi Arabia? And this is where the kill is. Leave is the person who should die next in this fight. But Magic's the only one chasing. He forces Lamp. Leave somehow gets out. Gushwei comes in again. Leave somehow gets a double kill from this situation, which seems all sorts of illegal. And I think this is a good example of what Saudi Arabia were missing in this part of the series. They need to be ruthless. They need to be on the same page. They need KSA to anchor and 4 people to turn this Genji and eliminate him. And they did get better at that in the series, but this first map, they didn't have that killer instinct. As we move on to Blizzard World, Saudi Arabia start running into a few more problems, especially now they're on the double flex lineup, because what they want with a double flex is for Quartz and Majid to play quite aggressive, take some kind of angle of their own where they can carry the fight or have a large impact. But what this does is a lot of what we saw in the first clip as well, where they end up isolating themselves a little bit. This provides big openings for Guxue and Leave on occasion as well. If we look at how they start in this fight here, they're going to TP to take control of the high ground. And then they're going to try and clear this area here with Illari ult. Stop the staging. Good choice here by Majid. So they're going to use that Illari ult. It's going to force out the rally. Lynx is going to use the rally to try and survive. They then try and push. KSA is going to use the Flux on top of it. Catches Lynxer. Able to get the punish here. Will survive for Dragon. And this all looks really reasonable from Saudi Arabia right now. Again, similar to that Samoa example, looks like they've gotten this fight in the bag. Late nano onto Guxue is going to help him survive. But because Majid and Quartz are here playing their own angle, suddenly the peel for Lubda in this situation isn't as strong as it should be. So Guxue is able to turn what is a 4v5, get a free jump onto the Baptiste, no peel. Yubi gets a nice TP away to disengage here. But again, Majid's attention is a little bit more on helping Quartz taking this aggressive angle when their eyes are forward, rather than surviving the aggression being put out by Guxue. So Guxue is able not just get one trade, but actually then get two trades, and then he's able to come back, and he'll even clean up the rest of the fight as well. And all of a sudden, from a completely won situation, China are able to turn it back in their favour. Even though they won the previous fight, it did cost China a lot of their ultimate, so Saudi Arabia should feel pretty comfortable holding in this ult situation with only 4.5 seconds left on the clock. But what we're going to see here is again a similar problem to Samoa, even though the comp's slightly different. They're going to use both their ults here in a pretty similar timing, the window and the wall. The nice thing about window and wall is obviously you can use them to clear point, but they do the same job here, so they layer ults for the same purpose. Secondly, the wall could be more aggressive. You could drop it, say, on this angle to cut off the Ana so she can't heal. Then you can really push aggressively into Guxue, into Leave, make sure they clear the cart, make sure their touch is really difficult. But they use both of these ults, but not only do they use both of these ults, they don't even push that aggressively. KSA is going to swing, but everyone's a little bit too focused on using the window here. I'd really like to see more people on this position clearing these guys aggressively. They don't manage to do either of those things, so what's going to happen? The split second these ults start to fade. Here comes the blade, here comes the nade, everything lands. Then in a really difficult ult situation, they're able to turn the fight, Leave gets the big clutch, and Saudi Arabia managed to lose from a winning situation again. We can see a fairly similar story on Saudi Arabia's attack as well. On the first point attack here, they're going to get themselves onto point, but instead of being interested in taking a step back to absorb the dive, then find value on the repush, they're a little bit more focused on getting value out of their flank angle between their Illari and their Sojourn. And we'll see in this fight, even though the Sojourn and Illari get value, it ultimately doesn't work out for them in the long run. So we'll see Saudi Arabia start to take space here. In a second, Guxue is going to go with the nano in this direction. Guxue is going to do a good job zoning the backline. And what we're going to see, the decision right now from Majid and Quartz is, can they find value pushing these angles? And what you'll see is actually Majid is going to find value. He's going to isolate Shy, win that 1v1. Quartz is going to jump up top, and Quartz is going to be able to find his kill on Monk as well. But while this is going on, Guxue's found himself in a situation where he can isolate Yubi with a primal. Then he's going to come over and isolate Lubda as well. So Guxue's going to get 2 kills at the same time this happens. So here comes Quartz, going to take the peak, kills Monk. But meanwhile, Guxue's just confirmed 2 kills as well. Now, admittedly, it doesn't help that Quartz slides off the map at this point. But what this ends up creating a lot of the times is Guxue's able to trade kills. And then even if Saudi Arabia's flank finds kills, we end up in this 3v3 dogfight. And a lot of the time in a 3v3 dogfight, the dive heroes are normally better than the counter dive heroes. So these dogfights invariably go China's way more often than Saudi Arabia. And that's exactly what we see in this first fight situation, where even though they got lots of value out of the flanks, they still ultimately lose the fight, get cleaned up, and China are able to complete the hold. They do eventually cap first, but they run into similar problems on second. We're going to see them pushing the flank here, and this time KSA even gets a really nice rock punish onto Leave. What Saudi Arabia are going to do now is they're going to regroup their forces, TP in this direction. Guxue's going to go with Nano, and again we see a situation where Majid actually chooses to go aggressive here with his Illari ult, try and trade Monk. He will eventually get this kill, but again because his attention's drawn forward to getting this kill, what we're left with is a situation where Guxue can then go and carry. Obviously he's got Nano Primal, but he's able to isolate. He's able to kill not just one, but then he's able to turn and get another kill. And now, all of a sudden, even though they've got the kill on Monk, they find themselves in this dogfighty situation, 3v3, 3v4, and Guxue and Leave are just able to hunt them down one by one, and they find themselves once again losing a fight where they get the opening pick. As we move on to what will end up being the final fight on Blizzard World, we see the same fundamental problem with Saudi Arabia's formation, where if they're too split, it just provides opportunities for Guxue to trade. Saudi Arabia are going to start the fight in a pretty good situation. They're going to spot the Widow, TP on top of him, kill him immediately. And we again see in this formation, we've got Magid and Quartz on a big angle, with core 3 playing stacked. And in theory, this is really good because Quartz and Magid can now just see the entire map. They can shoot every single player on China. The problem is, because Lubda's committed into this position as well, he's super vulnerable. So all of a sudden, Guxue is able to find the trade onto Lubda. And now you've traded a Widow for a BAP, but you're fighting in this area. The spawns favour defenders so much, especially trading a Widow for a BAP. This is an insane trade for China. They're so happy with this. Even saying all that, it still goes pretty well for Saudi Arabia afterwards. They're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on point, force the objective. Quartz and Magid again are doing a lot from their angle. Look how hard Monk has to DP because he's taking this damage the entire time. They're going to Nanoblade out to try and clutch. Magid and Quartz do a good job deepening the angle. They're even going to kill Monk in this area. They kill Guxue on point at the same time as well. So again, at this position, it looks really winnable. But because they lost Lubda early, you can see KSA's health is low, Yubi's health is low. And again, Shy is already back on Widow because he's got that close spawn. So what's going to happen is KSA is able to find the double kill out of nothing. Shy finds the headshot at the same time. And even though Quartz trades him, the fight's done. And again, what should have been a one situation where they've done so much of the hard work, Saudi Arabia leave themselves open to the clutch. And don't get me wrong, China are clutching. These are not easy fights for China to win. But they are being provided opportunities by the gaps in formation by the way Saudi Arabia are playing. I would maybe like to see a world where instead of aggressively TPing with everyone, what if they just kept their BAP, Sojourn, Illari up here, and then they only TP'd maybe their Sigma and Sim onto this to clear the Widow. If they did more things like this, where again they could do more stable step backs and repushes, I think this would limit the opportunities Guxue and Leave have to carry in a lot of these situations. A fair amount of problems for Saudi Arabia to solve. We've seen them punished a lot for being split, both mid-fight and especially when they're on the Illari BAP comp. We've seen no real killer instinct in these mid-fight situations to really punish the Genji or Doomfist and keep them on the back foot. And we've not really seen them be proactive enough at clearing and disrupting the staging of China, especially when they're using ults like Window and Simwall. So a lot to fix. Let's see how they approached it in maps 3 and 4. We see Saudi Arabia use the Bastion Lucio version of this comp on Suravasa, and they'll do the same on Esperanca later. This has a couple of initial benefits. One, it gets Guxue of Winston onto Doomfist. Primal's quite difficult to deal with, especially if you don't have a Bastion. But Meteor Strike, pretty simple ult to deal with. Doomfist kind of just has to use it as a second life more than anything. Likewise, the Bastion doesn't want to flank as much as for Sojourn, so automatically he's just going to play a tighter formation to everyone. Same with the Lucio, he doesn't want to flank like the Illari does, so automatically Saudi Arabia are going to play a little bit more grouped and enter into a step back, repush game, rather than trying to play these wide situations. But that's not all they have to solve. It helps, but there's still a lot of things to solve, and we can see the start of some of their solutions coming to fruition here on this D point on Suravasa. What we're going to see is a pretty standard setup from China. They're going to start taking some position on point, and then they're going to have their DPS try and set up and play wide in some kind of flank. On this occasion, it's Shy playing wide, but if we look, and we'll see this in so many of the clips today, Yubi's attention is directed on the flank. He's not worried about main. KSA's got main locked down. He'll control this area. Yubi is looking for punishes to be proactive and find value on the flanks. That's exactly what Yubi's going to do here. At the same time the Bastion ult goes, Yubi's going to find the TP. So everyone's busy DPing and dealing with this. Meanwhile, Yubi spotted the opportunity to TP, hits the right click onto Shy, able to finish the kill, and then it becomes nice and straightforward. All of a sudden, we have this situation where China are going to go for a dive, but China are all coming from one direction, and this makes it so much easier for Saudi Arabia to deal with. Obviously, Saudi Arabia have the beat in this situation as well, so when the Rally Blade comes, Haku's going to do a good job, as he did do all series of getting these beats off. They get the beat off, they drop the sim wall, and then it's a nice, easy pushback. And then if we even turn our attention to this blade, all of a sudden, it's not the problem on Samoa where Magid's chasing it by himself. UB and Majid have teamed up. They're pushing together on leave. They're just going to focus him down nice and easy. And it starts to look really clean from Saudi Arabia. If we take a look at the very next fight, we see a similar pattern of play. We're going to have Guxue and Monk playing down main. Lengths is going to walk up really aggressively to pocket leave on this aggressive off angle. And at some point, Shy is going to look to use this flank. So what they want is to get on every single side of Saudi Arabia, pressure them from every single side. So Saudi Arabia, if they just sit here and let this happen, they're going to have a bad time. They have to be proactive. And again, who's the person to find the proactive play? It's UB. At a certain point, once they walk up, UB's going to spot it. We're going to see this 4-1 split where we have a 4-man group here, TPing here. Meanwhile, KSA is going to anchor point and just play his life as best he can. This 4-man group is going to TP on the Brig. It's fair to say the Brig's going to have a real bad time in this 1v4. She's going to get eliminated. Suddenly, not only have they eliminated one of the off angles, they've eliminated the pocket to leave. So now leaves half health and isn't getting healed up. KSA is going to find a nice solo flux on the Ana. Again, there's no Brig to heal this Ana now. So he's just going to die. Everyone comes back. And if I pause it now, I can draw a nice, neat little circle around all of the Saudi Arabian players. We're all grouped. We're all together. And we're just going to focus down the threats one by one now. Now we've eliminated some of their angles. As we get to point C, we can really see Saudi Arabia start to hit their stride. They're going to come into this point. They're going to TP immediately and window immediately. And this does a few things. Not only does it make it difficult for Guxue to stay on point, it takes them away from the danger zone. All of China were looking to set up a dive in this area. So now none of them are set up. Shy's massively out of position. Leave's not ready. Guxue's going to get chunked. And also, now China's setup doesn't make sense because Lengtzer and Monk have to de-peak this. But because they de-peak, there's no pocket for Guxue. So what's going to happen is Guxue is actually not just going to get chunked down, he's going to die to this nade. And then what do Saudi Arabia do next? Do they just rest on their laurels, happy with this? No. KSA is going to go anchor the point. And if we look at the rest of them, they're so aggressive here. Leave's not ready for this push at all. He's not expecting this tempo, this aggression coming out from Saudi Arabia. They're going to push, they're going to get one kill. Again, comparing this to the Samoa downtown where Majid was chasing the Genji by himself. Here, it's a 3-man squad. Everyone's together. They're going to get lengths and they're going to keep going. And they will, just about eventually, with a little bit of help from Bastion, get the Ana in the end as well. And great staggers here from Saudi Arabia and a great level of aggression that we didn't see in the earlier part of the series. This fight doesn't quite work out for Saudi Arabia, but you can see a lot of the principles still in play. Initially, they're going to start on high ground. They know the Nanoblade is coming, so their plan for the Nanoblade is to TP and beat. They managed to TP and beat successfully. Everyone manages to get away pretty nicely. Not only that, but because they flipped the map, what they've actually done is give everyone a little bit of a better angle on Lengtzer. And if you watch UB and Majid's decision making, they're so aggressive on this swing. They're immediately on top of it. It's not the craziest swing you'll ever see, but the fact they're doing this so quickly and so decisively is why they're able to get this kill. They managed to pocket KSA through a lot of this. And then the bit that lets them down ultimately is just a slight split either side of this wall, so Majid can't quite pocket them through. And this slight split costs them, but in general, this fight was nearly so good from Saudi Arabia. Again, we see when it is these dogfighty 3v3 situations, China's comp does tend to come out on top more often than not, as Monk and Lengtzer are able to clean this one up. But a lot of good principles from Saudi Arabia, especially considering that was a Nanoblade fight. We'll move on to the last point of Suravasa, and I think this is a really important concept, especially if you're the sim player or one of the DPS players in this team. The reason UB is able to find so many good TPs and so many catches in this series is because he's always looking in the right areas. If I pause this now just before the fight starts, KSA is keeping an eye on main, making sure nothing crazy happens. But UB's attention, Quartz's attention, this is why Saudi Arabia do so well at this. Their attention is looking at the right areas. They know where to expect the flank from. Because they expect the flank from this area, it's a really straightforward job then to TP and catch them. In this situation, UB's just a step ahead of Shy. He's going to get the punish. Then it becomes very straightforward for Saudi Arabia. Everyone's in front of them. They kill Monk before the fight starts. They do a good job to get the beat off again. All of a sudden, it's a pretty simple fight to deal with. Maybe a little bit unlucky to use UB, so they have to roll. But overall, not too much of a problem. And now if we look at this very final fight, China's final attempt to try and stay in this map, what we'll see is really interesting decision-making from China. What's going to happen is instead of trying to set up the flanks, because he's going to get pressured out by Haku initially, at the top of our screen here, Haku's just going to put a little pressure on Shy. What happens is now all these players on China start to feel worried about going on the flanks. They're scared of getting TP'd on, so they're all going to play from main. If everyone plays from main, really easy for the Saudi Arabian team. All of a sudden, Shai's going to use this visor. Look at where Shai's going to try and use this visor from. Just from main into a sim wall. Really happy with this if I'm Saudi Arabia. At this point of the series, and this point of the map, they're going to C9, but Saudi Arabia have got in China's heads. They're now worried about taking space on the flanks. They're worried about playing too wide because they've been punished for it multiple times. And this is where the series really starts to turn in Saudi Arabia's favour. As we get to Esperanca, we can really start to see how the success Saudi have been having with the TP plays has started to affect China. If we watch China set up here, Quartz is going to use the Bastion ult, and obviously this means Length's attention and Monk's attention have to be focused on helping each other survive. But because of this, they're now playing tighter together. They're going to D-peak as well, and all of a sudden that means actually Leaf's position here and even Shai's position here. They're so aggressive and they're so split. If I pause it now especially, in theory this is a good setup for China because they have their DPS on one angle and they've got the rest of the team on the other angle. They've kind of got a pincer going. But actually, because of the supports being forced a little bit closer together, Shai and Leaf are now just completely isolated. So what's going to happen is Saudi Arabia just going to walk on them. Again, they're proactive. Leaf's going to peek. Doesn't get a chance. Everyone shoots him at the same time. Now the attention goes on to Shai. Another easy kill for Quartz. And all of a sudden, what an easy fight win off a Bastion ult to get themselves cap and a few extra meters. Here we get another really nice TP play from Saudi Arabia. What's going to happen is KSA is actually going to drop aggressively and get the rock punish on Gujue's block timing. Now, this started happening more and more as the series went on. I think early on in the series, especially, Gujue was getting a lot of value, but the longer it went on, the more KSA was winning that micro duel. And what KSA does here is actually massive, because what Saudi Arabia wants to do is TP onto the high ground. But if they just went here and TP'd onto the high ground, well, Monk's probably ready to nade it, Gujue's probably ready to boop it, Lengths is going to boop it, everyone's going to be ready, Leaf's going to dash through from an awkward angle or something. Really hard. But because KSA drops out aggressively onto Gujue here, also because he hits the rock, not only does this stop Gujue punishing a TP up here, it means if we watch Monk in a second, his attention has to be to go pocket Gujue, which means nobody's ready to deal with this TP. So KSA, bit of aggression. You can see it now, right? Monk's attention is all this way, and all of a sudden this TP is the freest thing in the world. KSA's then going to drop the Flux to catch up with him. Obviously, he catches Lengtser, and the Window Flux combo does a lot of work. But even without these ults, you can see Saudi Arabia have taken all the nice space of the map. And it's a really nice play from Saudi Arabia. Completely outplays China and wins a really important and normally quite difficult retake for the Arabians. The map's now really starting to get away from China, but Saudi Arabia do not let up. They know what to expect from China. Obviously, someone's going to come from main, but the real risk is what if someone comes maybe wide with this angle, or what if someone comes out in this window? So again, Yubi and Quartz, especially Yubi, are so switched onto these flanks, they're always able to shut it down. So if we watch how this fight pans out, again, Yubi's got attention here, he's got a TP so we can mark this angle, trying to make sure nothing dangerous comes from here. Eventually, Shai's going to try and go for a flank out of this window, but who's right there? Who's read the situation and got their attention? Yubi's right there, Quartz is right there. It's a bit of an int from Shai, if we're being honest, but Yubi and Quartz all over it, and this happened more and more in maps 3 and 4. Yubi and Quartz were just able to read exactly what China wanted to do and shut it down before they could get any value. This time we'll see a really difficult fight where Saudi Arabia have to try and retake the high ground against Nanoblade. But Saudi Arabia have started being more proactive as the series has gone on. They're going to TP aggressively here. Gujue gets a bit of a nice deny, but still Yubi and KSA take the TP. And now, because more and more questions have been asked of China as the series has gone on, all of a sudden, Gujue is trying to hard commit into the stream. He thinks he can kill everyone, and he's nearly right. Maybe if he gets Nano, he can. But if I look at Shai and Lengtser and Leaf's decision-making, they're all playing passive, trying to help clear this area. Suddenly, it's China making the split decisions, not Saudi Arabia. Gujue is going to get punished. They're going to drop the Nanoblade to try and clutch here. But the damage is already done. The beat comes through. He's still able to kill KSA, but then he keeps going. Monk has to reload at the worst possible time. And all of a sudden, it's not the cleanest fight, but Saudi Arabia are the ones able to win this tight clutch and making this Nanoblade difficult. And this is a pivotal fight as they go on to win this map. We then get to Route 66, and Saudi Arabia made a really interesting decision. They'd won the previous 2 maps on Lucio, Bastion, but China have picked Route 66, and this is for comp they normally play on Route 66. So they sub in Lubda, and they go back to double flex comp. So we've seen them do a lot of good work improving their proactivity, their killer instinct, the attention they put and pressure on Leave on Guxue, as well as a lot more creative TP plays. But now they go back to this comp, and it still has some of the same fundamental problems in the fact that the Illari and the Sojourn want to play a certain way that quite often leaves Yubi and Lubda exposed. So they do improve some things, but they still have some fundamental problems. So we can look through quite a bit of Route 66 and figure it out. I think this first fight especially is a pretty good example of some of the things they fixed, but some of the problems they still had. We see Saudi Arabia attacking. Guxue and Leave going to go for a bit of a cycle. They force out Leave's deflect. And now all of a sudden, Leave's going to peek quite aggressively. Magic's going to go back defensively. But if you look at the reaction here from Saudi Arabia, Quartz, KSA, Lubda, Yubi, everyone's attention is so keen to punish this Genji. The killer instinct has really improved as this match has gone on, and they actually get the kill on Leave. Maybe Leave shouldn't have gone for the play about deflect, can really make a case for that, but Saudi Arabia have ramped up their aggression and their killer instinct on these type of plays. They're able to stabilize and get the cart moving, but then we see this problem with the double flex again. Quartz and Majid find themselves a little bit isolated. Suddenly we have these 2-man groups. And what happens when they split into these 2-man groups? Suddenly Guxue gets opportunities. The nade's going to hit about as good as it could. Guxue's going to get a huge punch. Majid will just about get out. But now all of a sudden it becomes a dogfight. And in the dogfight, China's comps are favoured a lot of the time. They do a good job getting KSA out, but again, Shy is able to take over. Now Guxue and Leave, as we've seen so often in this series, they're just able to pounce on the low remaining players. They clean it up, they win the dogfight. Still some inherent problems with the formation when they get into this 3-2 split though, but one thing they did do a lot better on, especially on their attack here, is the ult usage. Think back to that Blizzard world where we saw them use window and wall and not really do anything with it on the 3rd-point defense. But if we watch Saudi Arabia's ult usage here, what we're going to see is much better. They're going to start with window in a second. Lubda's going to drop it here, and it's going to force everyone to de-peek. Okay, so the window doesn't get huge initial value. It forces a rotation for the backline, forces a defensive nade, but they don't stop at this point, and that's the important thing. Saudi Arabia have the space, so let's walk into it, and let's use ults to keep going. So they're not just going to take all the space. They're going to use the Illari ult on top of it. Suddenly, Quartz and Majid have this strong angle again. They're a little bit tighter. Again, you see Lubda and Majid are now a bit more within pocket range than previously. They've got cart pressure as well. They've got the angles. Everything looks good. They use this Illari ult. They're going to focus Shy. Leave dodges it, but they're able to get the kill on Shy. Leave has to rush the Blade to dodge it as well. So Leave doesn't actually get any value out of this Blade. Now they've survived for Blade, but again, not content to rest on their laurels. We talked right at the start of the video. If you can get the dive team on the back foot, keep them on the back foot. Quartz is going to drop the overclock. So not only does Leave's Blade get no value, he dies for it. They've got him stuck in a corner. They keep pushing, and it costs them 3 ults, but a very clean take in the end from Saudi Arabia on this first point. They don't have a lot of time for second because they were held up so much on first. But they do a really good job here. They're going to peel initially the Doomfist. And again, we see Lubda and Majid in a tighter formation. Yubi's TP aggressively here, I think, is actually really good. It forces Monk to D-peak, puts a little bit of pressure on. Unfortunately for Yubi, they're actually going to outplay him. And they kill his TP, which means he's now going to get stranded and traded. But because the rest of his team are in a tight formation, they're able to deal with the Doomfist. KSA gets a lot of nice rock out plays. And they're able to walk forward after this. So even though Yubi's going to die for it, they're all able to survive. Quartz finds a pick. They force the Meteor Strike. Quartz is actually going to slide before the Meteor Strike comes down, which is maybe a bit of a hot take from Quartz, but he gets pocketed through all of it, and it's all okay. Now we're in a 4v4 situation. KSA is going to spot the opportunity to solo flux the Ana. No Brig alive, so not a lot Monk can really do here. He will go down. KSA dodges for sleep. Saudi Arabia suddenly have all the space, and China really have to reset. So better tight formation to start with, and good ult usage, good peel. Everything looks good. Now Saudi Arabia with a chance to snowball, and we're going to see a pretty similar setup. They're going to try and soft TP to clear high ground, but much like first point, they want to use the ults to finish this. If I pause now and let's look at the formation. We've got the 3-man group and we have the 2-man group. But instead of being one group here and one group here, we're a little bit more on each other's LOS. It's a bigger circle, but I can draw a circle around everyone. And Majid and Lubda have a little bit of a better pocket angle than they did in some of the fights on Blizzard World. Likewise, Quartz is a bit isolated, really far at the back of the map. So it's actually really hard for China to dive Quartz in a meaningful way here. What we're going to see now, same thing we saw on first point. UB's going to start with a wall. They're going to start pressuring the objective. I'm just going to take a little bit of an angle. But they just want to keep using the ults to force the objective, force everyone to D-peek, and then can they find an opening on top of that. While they're all D-peeked, Magic's going to peek him aggressively. Runs into Shy. Not able to quite find the kill. Lubda's now going to drop a window. I think you can make a real argument. Again, this is essentially doing the same thing the wall does. So not the best window from Lubda. But they're still able to keep pushing the objective, forcing the pressure. Again, if I look at Leave and Gushway's positioning, they're not really set up to a dive. They're busy dealing with this. Magic's then going to pop the Illari ult. And much like we saw on the first point, because the other ults have pushed China into bad space onto the back foot, this Illari ult from Magic becomes really straightforward. All of a sudden, a beautiful one lines up against the Genji and Ana. They take care of them. And probably the cleanest second point route attack you're going to see all tournament. If we look at the third point, they start to run into some of the same problems where Quartz is going to try and slide and take the high ground. But that sets up a pretty easy rally for Lengtser, who's able to take care of it. They kill the 2 of them. They push the rest of Saudi Arabia back. And then the next fight, they're actually going to be able to do the same thing again. Saudi Arabia, again, going to try and just take this high ground where the camera is now. But China are ready for it. They're set up for it. So as soon as they commit to this space, we're going to see the engage come in from Blade. Even though Magic gets a pick in a second. Here's the Nano Blade. Targets this area. Magic can't get out. They end up trading pretty effectively at the end. I want to take a look at this final fight properly, maybe in another video, because so much goes on. But for the purposes of this one, I think Saudi Arabia rush it. They go for an aggressive TP play. Lubda and Yubi take it. It actually results in Lubda getting traded. The Illari ult then hits Monk, but Monk manages to clutch out incredibly. And they end up in a situation where it's 3v4, Saudi at a player disadvantage, but for some reason, China's backline is just going to drop into KSA. And it's going to allow him to hit the rock, trade out. Quartz hits a nice Sojourn ult. And it's a nice clutch from Saudi Arabia, but I think China somewhat fumbled the bag. China are going to swap back onto Winston for the attack, and this is going to cause Saudi Arabia some problems. Initially, it's just going to be a dive onto left-hand side to clear some space, and China are actually going to lose Leave in the process of this one. So in theory, it should be a pretty good situation for Saudi Arabia to get a kill out of that. But Shy's going to equalize it, and then we're in a 4v4 situation, Nano available for China. They're going to go with the Nano. Gushway's going to land on the backline, but actually, Majid and Lubda, their formation is a little bit tighter than we saw on Blizzard World, and they should be able to survive this. The problem Saudi Arabia are going to have is there's actually Shy who finds the kill right now. What you want in these situations when you're being dived with your Saudi Arabia is you want KSA to mark this angle with his Sig Shield, with his Flux, with everything. You want him to mainly mark nade, but obviously mark for Sojourn as best he can as well. I think in this situation, KSA knows it's a really hard nade for Monk to land in this area. So he chooses to turn his attention to help just kill Gushway as quickly as possible. Doesn't factor in the Sojourn, so Shy's going to get a free shot. Then all of a sudden, Lubda has no peel, so it becomes a pretty straightforward kill for Gushway. And China get a pretty straightforward first point off the back of just a single nano. This leaves Saudi Arabia with some difficult retakes to get some ground on second. And in all honesty, it's going to go horrifically for them. They're going to TP out. KSA is going to start with a Flux. Going to be on Shy, but Shy still has Shift, so he just leaves. You can only really do these kind of Fluxes onto Ana because she has no movement abilities. So after that, they're all just left in a little bit of a corner. DPS above them. They get rally bladed. They're going to lose the fight. Ultimately, you're maybe not too unhappy to trade 1 for 2 ults. As we go into the next retake, this is really Saudi Arabia's to win. And they try and do what they did on the attack, where they use the Sim ult into the Illari ult to try and take all the space back. But here, the Primal causes some real problems. Again, they go with the TP, the Illari ult and Sim wall. Again, if you think of how they did it on the attack, they would normally Sim wall, push China back, then Illari ult to finish. And this time, they actually start with Illari ult. So you can see when Majid uses it, well, everyone's in a pretty good position to either shift it or dodge it or duck out of it. Makes it a much harder setup for Majid. Likewise, the Symbol comes out at the same time, which isn't the worst Symbol. But because this is happening, Magic doesn't find great value with the Illari ult. Gushue is able to juggle Yubi away from all of this. And again, you look at a situation where, because Magic's trying to go aggressive with it, his attention is pulled forward, meaning he's not peeling in quite the same way he normally would be if he was just playing a more default position. This allows Gushue to get in to kill Yubi. He comes back and he kills Majid. And now this is just over before it even really starts. Gushue is able to get so much value, carries the fight, and this is going to leave a massive time bank for China on third point. As we get on to third point, a huge time bank, but Saudi Arabia start to stabilize. It's a much narrower part of the map now, which means it's easier to mark all the flanks, easier to keep their guys close. They're going to lamp out KSA quite nicely. They managed to get a one-shot through the window onto Monk. Even though the Illari was deflected, they again start to find some of these nice TP plays. You can see right now, Yubi's managed to find a TP for him and Quartz on top of Lengths, and nothing Lengths can do. They might have already won the fight through that one bop, but suddenly we start to see these TPs come back into play, and Yubi start to find big value with them again. Very next fight, and it's a similar situation. This time, Shai's taken the big flank, trying to look for a potential overclock timing. He's going to force the lamp out of Lubda. But if you look at Yubi and Quartz's response, they're both going to come. They're going to TP. Quartz is going to chase them all the way out. Quartz is going to keep chasing, forces him all the way out, then realizes he can ult and get a kill timing here. Going to eventually pick up Shai. KSA is able to push and kill Monk at the same time. It's a bit of a shame they end up using Symbol for this one, because if he just holds it half a second, he'll realize they've won the fight regardless of this. But again, good value found from the flanks by Quartz and Yubi. Ultimately, that Symbol used in the previous fight probably comes back to bite him. This time, China are going to start with the Nano. It's actually a really, really high-quality peel from Lubda with heals and lamp across the map. But a lot of ults coming up for China. They're going to be able to get the cancel with the Doom Punch onto the Flux as well. The window looks really good from Lubda too, but Shai has the overclock. He hits everything just at the right time, and China are able to snowball it in off the back of this. Then we get to these infamous overtime situations where Leave dies first, both fights. And I think it is Leave's fault. It's really avoidable. If I'm Team China and I'm looking at this, I really feel these are avoidable situations. But I still want to give credit to Saudi Arabia, because if you compare the level of aggression and the killer instinct they showed in the first couple of maps, if they still had that same level, I don't think they kill Leave in a couple of these situations. If we look at Leave here, he's going to dodge the rock. He's going to use his deflect. He's going to dash on Yubi here. Then half a second later, look at the attention. Yubi's coming, Lubda's coming, Quartz is coming, KSA is looking, Majid's there. Everyone is here to make sure they get this kill. And just this switched onness, this half a second where everyone's just half a second quicker at looking at the Genji, shooting at the Genji, makes all the difference, gives them this crucial kill, and allows them to get this first fight and this first cap. Ends up being a straightforward one in the end. This time they're not caught by the late flank. If we look at their formation here, instead of being what it was in the first one where they had a 3-2 split, everyone's much more grouped and on top of each other. They're trying to use the TP to go together, clean everything up. They still get traded a little bit more than they probably would have liked, but they get the cleanup kills. They did get stopped just after first to a Gushue Nano. I don't think there was anything too deep there. Gushue got a nice Nano off. Majid couldn't find a connection with his Illari ult, so they get stopped just after the cap. As we go on to the Saudi Arabian defense, what we see is kind of what we saw on first, where Leave is just going to die. I think this one is well played by Saudi, but this one I think is more just a mistake from Leave. If I pause it now, obviously Saudi are doing a good job of having their eyes in the right place, like we've seen so far in the series. They're looking at where the danger area will be. I can make a real argument. Leave is peeking here without deflect. If I look at his supports, they're both underneath. Shai's not even peeking with him. He's kind of on his timing, but I think this one's really just on Leave. It's fair to say the dive comp on attack with only a minute left and no ultimates is a really tough situation. It's a really, really tough fight to win. But I think Leave just messes this one up and gets punished for it, and obviously sets up Saudi Arabia for the full hold, the defense, and their first ever World Cup title. While they made a lot of fixes for the double flex support on Route 66, I still think there was large parts of that map they were quite fortunate. But there's a saying in sport that you make your own luck. And I think the way Saudi Arabia adapted throughout the series, especially in maps 3 and 4, they earned their luck and they earned their chance to win it in that final map. I think the big takeaways if you're looking at this in terms of how Saudi Arabia countered China, knowing where the danger is probably the biggest thing. UB and Quartz were always looking in the right direction. It's really easy to see the future if you know where to look. And UB, I think, was probably, for that reason, my MVP of the Grand Finals. The other thing is change your formation depending on the comp. For a lot of Blizzard World, I felt like Saudi Arabia was still playing their double flex, how they play it versus everything. You can't always do it versus every composition. Do you need to change the formation? Do you need to change the pairing? It certainly helped them a bit on Route 66, and if they'd done it on Blizzard World, they might have won that map too. Also, if you're playing versus Dive, have that killer instinct. Keep him on the back foot. Pressure that Genji. If you can all just be half a second quicker to focus him, half a second quicker to turn on him, half a second faster to just keep pushing and keep him on the back foot, it will make a huge difference to your results against Dive. And I think that's what Saudi Arabia did so well in this series, and why they deserve to win the World Cup.